Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Strategy Session. I can't wait to get started. I actually just got back from the gym, so for all the people who love to work out there, shout out to you. And as always, let me know where you're tuning in from. I saw we had from South Africa, England, Australia, Norway. I love just how global this community really is. So I wanted to come to you with an update this Sunday to help with your strategy as we go into the parabolic phase of the bull run. So first up, Michael Saylor says that Microstrategy has beat every single company in the S&P index since 2020 when they started with their Bitcoin strategy, and it is astounding to say the least, now forcing Microsoft to consider a Bitcoin investment, which is huge. This is the third largest company in the world, and they have to allow shareholders to vote. Then we've got a big segment today on Elon Musk and how he just added 26 billion to his net worth. Now, why do I want to talk about Elon Musk? I always try to stay politically neutral on this channel. However, I am in favor of freedom of speech, and just a freedom of the sovereignty, self-sovereignty over your money, your identity, and everything else that crypto embodies. And I am very interested in us getting it right this time, because I believe the last 30 years, the government in the world has been running a certain particular way. And as Charles Hoskinson says, the next 10 years will be the greatest years of change in human history. Nothing will ever be the same again. We are on the verge of a prosperous, magnificent era in tech, and I want to see that tech flourish. So I'm going to go over everything that's happening with Elon Musk, the robots, all of that, and also add a segment on Tim Draper and what he was investing in about a year ago, because he has historically been very early to the party to let you in on what your investment should be geared toward. Not financial advice, just some tips on very successful investors in my network and what they're doing. And also, of course, we're going to check in with the total 3, which is the whole entire altcoin market cap minus Ethereum and Bitcoin, as it's poised to break out. And I want to let you know just exactly how much time you have to get prepared before we head into that parabolic phase, which, as you know, when that train leaves, it waits for no one, and I don't want you to be left behind. So we're going to go over that. We're going to go over how many months historically after the halving is the best time to sell, and where that leaves us for next year, and what I think will happen after elections. And lastly, we'll be going over some Tether FUD. The Wall Street Journal came out and said that Tether was being investigated, and it caused Bitcoin to momentarily take a dip, not a crash. And the Tether co-founder came out and said it was fake news. But I will go over my thoughts on Tether long term. And I'm also going to give you a bonus altcoin that is highly undervalued, in my opinion. I'll give you a hint. This shirt is your hint. Eat, sleep, mint, repeat. So without further ado, I'm your host, Megan Nelson, aka Crypto Megan, and let's do this. So I thought it was very fitting, as times are changing indeed, to show this clip of U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen giving a press conference, and as she's being asked about the dollar's role as world reserve currency, the seal of the Department of Treasury falls. I mean, it's just so ironic. You can't leave this one out. So we're going to start with this. I'm going to play it for you now.
Thank you, Colby Smith with the FT. You've described calls for widespread tariffs as deeply misguided, and the IMF today has warned that such policies will dent global growth. Can you elaborate more on the near-term economic impact of these policies, and over a longer time horizon, how concerned are you about the potential impact of the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency?
Can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up.
Let's see.
Know what is, okay? That is just happy Strategy Sunday, everybody. Happy Strategy Sunday. All right, so, and on that note, I mean, we have news here that 5 U.S. banks face billions in losses as silver price spike hits short sellers hard. Silver, there's been a theory that silver's been repressed for many, many years, and whether or not that's true, it's causing billions in losses as it spikes for the banks. And there's been a lot of issues with bank outages and the bank failures in 2023. It's just a lot of different signs pointing to the same path, that the old dinosaur ways of doing things are starting to die slowly, and that if they're going to keep up with the pace of the future, I mean, the future is going where it's going, with or without you. And so if you don't jump on that bandwagon, you're going to be left behind. So the banks are going to figure out how they're going to have to become a service instead of something that people have to use. They're going to have to compete to custody people's money, basically. So let's check in on the sentiment. We are currently in greed, the beginning of the greedy area, but currently in greed. So it's a very important crossroad for Bitcoin right now, as I'll show you in the next charts. But first, let's check out Plan B's statement here. The best time to buy Bitcoin is 6 months before the halving and sell 18 months after the halving. And it has historically beaten the buy and hold. The next halving is in April 2024. Okay, so 18 months from the date of this past halving this year in April puts us right at October 2025 to where we should see some sort of, actually many other indicators point to this, which I'll go over in another Strategy Sunday next week. But that's just a date to keep in mind. That lands in next October, and it lines up with a lot of other dates and confluence in other indicators. And here we have this. I stick to my 2019 prediction. $1 trillion market cap in 2020 to 2024 at a 50K Bitcoin, and a $10 trillion market cap 2024 to 2028, 500K Bitcoin. Plan B is the inventor of the stock to flow model, and it's very hard for us as humans to comprehend how these things can happen until they happen. I'm going to repeat it. When Bitcoin was at 17K, nobody can envision that in the next 4 to 6 months, Bitcoin was going to run up to hit $70,000. And that happened. And this will happen. I mean, Bitcoin, it's either going to zero, as Tim Draper said, or it's going to work. And if it works, then, the price, it can climb up to 500K, even to $1 million by the end of the decade and beyond. So if that is the case, then we just have to be patient and zoom out and make this game a little bit easier than a lot of people on YouTube and around Twitter make it to be. And also you have to ask yourself a question. Do you like to trade? Are you a trader? If so, then you can sign up to the Capital Mindset, which I will be becoming a part of very shortly. And I really love the group. I've been in it for 3 years. It's absolutely phenomenal. We help people buy the bottoms of patterns and accumulate when things are low and find those undervalued gems. And if you're an investor, it's the same thing. We show you how to buy the bottom in the accumulation zone where smart money buys. And that's what you have to do. It's a buy and hold strategy. Now, Plan B lies somewhere in between, where maybe you could buy those 6 months before the Bitcoin and sell 18 months after. And if you would have bought earlier, it would have been better, obviously, but you would have had to have a lot more patience. And who's to say you wouldn't have sold it before? So This is just to give you an indication of where we could be. Now, this cycle, it's interesting. In fact, I actually do think we could go to an $8 to $10 trillion market cap. 500K Bitcoin, I think, is pretty much out of the realm. But many people have predicted that it will hit anywhere between 100 to 200,000, which is not bad. So we're all in this for several reasons, right? We're in this for financial freedom and being able to have those tools that traditionally only traditional investors have had access to, institutional investors, accredited investors. And now we have access to those tools for the first time ever in the free transfer of value on the internet. It's phenomenal. So yeah, there's a lot at stake here. We don't want to mess this up. But what else is at stake is unveiling the corruption of the past and going forward with transparency, integrity, and trying to make the world a better place, a more equitable place, a more fair place. I just wanted to show you this chart. It's also from the Capital Mindset. And it's basically showing that Bitcoin is at a pivotal crossroad. We're right here at resistance, here in what is a bull flag now. This is the 1 hour chart. And we're right there at the critical resistance. If we can break through here and then have a flush breakout to 70K, test 70K again, and flip and hold 70K, I mean, we're off to the races. So it's a very pivotal time for Bitcoin. Now we are currently potentially, I've already seen a higher low. So what will Bitcoin do now? Will it come back down to test the bottom of this pattern or fall below? 68%. There's a 68% likelihood it'll break up out of this pattern. It remains to be seen. But we are getting very, very close to having some sort of move, big momentous move. And if history rhymes, then it could possibly be to the upside. And you know what? I'm preparing for that because I don't want to be left behind. Now, if I load the boat now and it goes down, for whatever reason, we see a black swan or it just decides to test the bottom of this range, I'm going to load up with more because I believe that we're on the verge of a very, very prosperous fourth leg of the bull run. And I want to be ready for it. And I want you to be ready too. Next, this is the chart that really is what I watch on a daily basis is alongside Bitcoin dominance. So typically Bitcoin dominance shoots up, all the show is on Bitcoin, then it filters into the large caps and the mid caps and the low caps. This cycle has been slightly different, but nonetheless, this is a chart to watch as to when the altcoins can start ripping. And when they do, it's like you'll see 20, 30% gains in a day, and it'll just keep going until it doesn't, until the music stops. So it's important to have an exit strategy as well, which we'll get into in this channel also. So we've got an inverted head and shoulders, which is a very, very bullish pattern. It could potentially be playing out here. So this is the neckline. We're watching for a break of the pattern at the neckline at 640 billion. And so then we have potential targets all the way up to 780 billion and beyond. And support is all the way down here at 500 million. So, right, if we break this $640 billion line, then altcoins will see a pretty massive rise. It will be the beginning of the altcoin run. And I'm predicting that that happens toward the end of this year, but going into the beginning of next year. So I want to be ready. And you know what? If we go down to the bottom of the range in Bitcoin that we saw over here, it just gives us more time. It buys us more time until we have that move. And when that move happens, it's quick, guys. So let's be ready for it. Next up, fun fact, less than 5% of the global population is invested in crypto. So when you think that you're late to the party, it's just so critical to zoom out. You are not late. You're still part of the early adopters, and we have got just so much ahead of us. It's like when people invested in Amazon in the beginning, and it was like correcting 50% for the first, I don't know how many years, 4 to 5 years, until it actually started its massive ascent, and how many hands it traded through along the way, right? But if you would have just bought and held and been patient, you would have seen astronomical gains. And this is the beginning of a new technology that's going to change the world. And we are still early to that party. So don't think for a minute that you're late and you can still change your life. So here I have just a prediction from Anthony Scaramucci, who was on my podcast. He was the infamous press secretary of the White House for only 11 days. He actually got fired, but he's a very cool guy. He's the founder and CEO at Skybridge Capital, and just very knowledgeable about markets, has a deep TradFi knowledge. And this is what he had to say about Bitcoin and his price prediction and how you should evaluate the market long term.
I think Bitcoin, it shouldn't trade at a market capitalization of a company. It should trade at a market capitalization of an entire asset class. So if Bitcoin right now is $1.5 trillion, there are companies that are worth $1.5 trillion. Oh, yeah. But, gold is probably 16 now because of the recent price rise. And so even if Bitcoin got to half of the price of gold, it's 8 trillion. You're at 1.5. Yep. That's a 5.75 move from here. So that asset could easily trade to $350,000. You could invite me back on your podcast and I could say it's undervalued in terms of where it is going as an asset class.
Right.
I think
traded at the valuation of an entire asset class. I just want to paint the picture for you of just how early we are to the party relative to where it could go. And then we have here, Bitcoin is the future. Don't stress or be afraid. Embrace it. That's right. A majority of the population fears it. They don't understand it. And, it takes time for the adoption of technology. It did for the internet, and it does for blockchain. And especially now with the way that we interact on chain, right? There's a lot of, you're responsible for your own money. There's nobody you can call. You've got to learn all this stuff. So it's scary and it's frightening to a lot of people, but hopefully with, my small part in creating these videos and all of you who are advocates of the space, we can change the world, like one brick at a time, one network at a time, one friend, one family member. And this is absolutely just going to be the best time to be alive, I think, with all of these changes. So in case you missed it, now we're going to talk about Elon Musk, because I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me. I think that we're at a pivotal crossroads too in this sense as well. Check it out. So in case you missed it, Tesla stock up over 18% this morning, almost $40 a share on a huge earnings beat. So he kind of reminds me of Cathie Wood. I don't know. I'm a big fan of hers. I know a lot of people are like, but she's underwater and she's just, I like her vision. I like her long-term vision. I like her boldness. I like, her being able to step outside the box and do what she thinks is right, even if it's her contrarian opinion. And I'm not saying that it's just cool because it's contrarian. I think it's cool because I believe in her vision and the way that she thinks. I like it. So I think Elon Musk is a similar player in that regard. Tesla just experienced its best day in 11 years. Despite being up only 4.85% year to date, the stock's recent surge has added an estimated $26 billion to Elon Musk's net worth. That's billion with a capital B. I mean, this guy is wealthy beyond belief. But what's interesting is he could live a life where he never has to work again. He steps out of the spotlight. He's pushing for all of these changes to be done that are massive. They're expensive, they're clunky, they're slow, and that most people wouldn't do. So I find that very admirable. Elon Musk is $26 billion richer after Tesla's best day. So let's take a look at his total net worth. Musk is now worth almost $270 billion, according to Forbes, putting him about $58 billion ahead of his good friend and former Tesla board member, Larry Ellison. That's pretty astounding. So Musk controls 13% of Tesla's astounding shares, accounting for the bulk of his net worth, though he also owns a big chunk of SpaceX, which is valued at the private markets at over $200 billion. So this guy has enough money for, I don't know, hundreds of lifetimes and beyond. And my good friend, Tim Draper, many of you know him, is a very famous venture capitalist. He was investing in robotics and AI a long time ago, and he talks about it here on our podcast that we did 1 year ago, before the AI boom, before everything started going crazy. Check it out.
You would ever want to go back 50 years or 200 years before indoor plumbing and electricity and whatever.
It's a fantastic point.
You would never want to go back. So we are going to go forward, and the next 5 generations are going to look back and say, God, these guys didn't even have drones following them around.
Can you imagine? I mean, it's just so funny to talk about, and it just blows my mind. Yeah.
And they were on one planet. They were living on one planet. Can you imagine?
Yeah. The headline I saw the other day, by the way, it said,
So he's a futurist. He bought Bitcoin at $600 and watched it tank, now 30,000 of them, which is a massive sum, and watched them tank by 50% the following 2 weeks. He bought them from the Silk Road from the government. And he thought to himself, they're either going to zero or they're going to infinity, because it's either going to work or it's not. And he held strong. And he's still holding all of them today. So yeah, he's definitely a very smart man. And actually my altcoin pick at the end of this video, if you want to skip to the end, go ahead. Although I highly recommend you stay here to have a look at this with me, because this all matters as to what's going to happen in the elections. There's a chart at the end that he gets behind, and I think it's a massively undervalued altcoin. So we'll get there soon. So back to Elon Musk. Listen as Elon Musk talks about taxes and reducing the size of government. Let the people keep a lot more of their hard-earned money. Do you think Musk is the best choice to identify government waste? So as you know, he's running for this DOGE, Departments of Government Efficiency, and he's out there kind of like campaigning almost with Trump, kind of like, doing this whole campaign himself, trying to get the spotlight on Trump because he believes that that's the way forward as far as freedom of speech, unveiling corruption and all of that stuff. So I wanted to get to a point with this. I'll show you a few more things. $44 billion was not the cost of Twitter. It was the cost of restoring free speech. So this is a man with like unlimited net worth, and he seems to just be driven by cause and purpose, which I then thought about, like, would somebody like that be good for a government board? Or would they lack knowledge in politics? Would they lack knowledge in business? I don't know. So let's continue. And then I dug a little bit further. Doesn't it seem odd that the same people who demand that everyone have vaccine ID are now insisting that voter ID should not be required? And then this guy says, remember that time when you couldn't do certain things without showing your vaccine card, even though nearly everyone who got vaccinated also got and spread around the C word anyway. That was a cool time. Yeah, it's kind of like they had this mass control over the people. And I don't want to go into conspiracies. I don't want to go into conspiracy theories, but I had to literally show my marriage license to travel back to California with my Swedish husband and our C vaccines. So it was a very strange time. And if they can go through all of that craziness and all of that effort in the name of public health, and because although many people then got it anyway and spread it anyway, why don't we have a better system for voter ID and to be more transparent and to be more robust? I mean, that's what the blockchain can provide. But yet it seems that there's this lack of transparency on such a deep scale. And, it bothers a lot of people. Next up, the U.S. has no functional president and has not had one for months, and it's barely noticeable and barely matters because there's a permanent unelected machine that runs the government. Again, I don't want to get into tin hat like conspiracy theories. I'm not going to dive deep into rabbit holes like Joe Rogan does, but yeah, I mean, it seems to be the popular consensus that President Joe Biden and presidents past have been somewhat of puppets or, characters that have been manipulated by other people running the show, right? And so it'll be interesting to see if that whole thing gets unmasked, what will happen in the world? We're at very strange times indeed. So I asked ChatGPT, what would it be like to have Elon Musk as a part of the Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, with all this money he has and not a care in a world about like financial woes or political power because he's got all the power. What would be the positive points of that? And so here it says, visionary thinking. He could drive innovative policy changes and encourage government initiatives in technological scientific advancement, drawing on experience, pushing the boundaries. Okay, problem-solving orientation. Financial independence. Wealth could afford them a level of autonomy from financial incentives and lobbying pressures. No manipulation and no corruption because he can't be bought, right? It's interesting to think about. Risk-taking mentality. Unlike many career politicians, a business-minded official with resources might be willing to take calculated risks on ambitious projects. So nobody has been willing to get rid of Gary Gensler. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And yeah, these are really valid points. Innovation in government infrastructure. Drawing from experience in tech and business, they could promote digital transformation, focus on sustainable development, inspiration and public engagement. Their leadership style could inspire public engagement and innovation among young people and aspiring entrepreneurs, and global collaboration. With international influence and connections, they might foster global collaboration on critical issues like climate change, cybersecurity, and space exploration. Like, these are all really interesting things that we haven't really seen in the government because politics, it's kind of a dirty game, right? It's a fine line, and you've got to like walk that line and make sure not to piss off too many people in the process. And so who knows? It could be a refreshing thing for the government. And of course, I couldn't go one episode without showing you an inspiring clip from Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano, on what the world could look like in the future and why it's so important to have conviction in those plays and why Cardano could be 33 cents now or wherever it's at, but could be the biggest cryptocurrency in the world over time. It's possible, right? Especially with the big news yesterday on the YouTube I put up yesterday about bringing DeFi to Bitcoin. Cardano will be the chain to do it. So have a listen.
In 7 years' time since Cardano launched, we went from nothing to an 11-figure network with millions of people and the largest research group in the world and the passion of the young people. And in another decade's time, we'll be larger than Ethereum. And in another decade's time, we'll be larger than Bitcoin. And in another decade's time, the majority of governments in the world will run on our infrastructure because they trust it. That is what thinking in decades gives you.
Oh man, I resonate with this so much. Charles Hoskinson for president? No, but I resonate with it so much because I've worked so hard to, I mean, this is not the same scale at all, but it's always the slower path to prioritize security, trust, reliability over scalability, speed, and efficiency. And it's kind of like what I intended to do and what I've been able to do with my brand. In the crypto world, there are a lot of short-term, very enticing offers, but the long road is what helps you establish that trust with people in the industry, those unbreakable bonds, getting to know the industry elite and what they're working on from the ground level. And that's what I want to bring to you guys and that I've worked so hard to do. So I think this man has a vision. We need more people like him with this vision to get us to these astronomical heights. So I love it. I'm here for it. Next up, this is FUD from the Wall Street Journal that came out and said that crypto companies behind Tether used falsified documents and shell companies to get bank accounts. So they're saying that Tether is being looked into by the US and that things are not looking good. And then we have here Paulo Ardoino, the CEO of Tether, says, as we told to Washington Street Journal, there is no indication that Tether is under investigation, and Wall Street Journal is just regurgitating old noise. Full stop. That happens a lot in crypto. When they want to mount a tax, a narrative can be spun up like on the drop of a dime. and then suddenly there's a lot of FUD going around and fear and people sell. I don't think Tether is going to have any issues this cycle or until we hit the climax of the cycle. But that being said, it's always been a thought in my mind, if they want to take people down and viciously attack them, then they could, and they could start probing, they could start finding reasons to poke holes or whatever it is. So I don't know what's going to happen to Tether in the future. Maybe something happens, a full investigation comes in the bear market, because that's when things tend to break. When the tide washes out, you discover who's been swimming naked. Time-old saying by Warren Buffett, right? But for now, I think that we're fine. And as he's confirmed, there's nothing to worry about. So Tether CEO, there is no indication U.S. Treasury is investigating stablecoin issuer. So we'll take it with a grain of salt. We'll continue, but we'll be cautious and we'll have our eyes open. But it's not worth being fearful about, being scared right now. Just beware and maybe hold some in USDC, hold some in USDT, and store the rest in Bitcoin. I don't know, diversify a little bit. But I hold Tether. I've used Tether for years, and that's just my 2 cents on that. Next up, this is the clip of Michael Saylor saying Microstrategy beat every single company in the S&P index using Bitcoin strategy. I mean, could you imagine this could happen? Check this out.
Microstrategy's bought about $8.3 billion worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's up 44% a year on average since then. The S&P's up 12%. And since we levered it, we're up 825%. The number one performing stock in the S&P is NVIDIA, up 821% as of Friday. So we beat every single company in the S&P index using a Bitcoin strategy.
Every single company. He sounds a little bit like Trump, right? No, but really interesting. The stock market is going to need to pivot, because if they're not getting the returns that they could in the stocks and MicroStrategies, I mean, they're going to have to come up with another strategy to be competitive, which leads us to the next news piece. Microsoft, the world's third largest company to have shareholders vote on the proposal of investing in Bitcoin. Of course, they really probably don't want to do this at all, but they're being forced to by the majority of the shareholders at least look into it, because they feel they're missing out on gains. We're getting FOMO on a massive scale around the world for Bitcoin now, and that's just the beginning. Now, to wrap this up, I'm going to give you my bonus altcoin pick, which is Proppy, the Pro token. As you guys know, I was big on them way earlier on in the cycle last year. End of last year, I started talking about them. They were at about 30 to 40 cents when I started advising, and we went all the way up to $4. It was a phenomenal run. They achieved the network effect because they're on Coinbase. They have the Coinbase wallet promotion, and also they've just done some really innovative, very cool things. This is news that has come out recently for Proppy. So there's two companies, Proppy and Proppy Keys. Proppy Keys is the one that enables you to mint your addresses on the blockchain, to mint famous landmarks, etc. And you can now get an unstoppable domain of .proppykeys. And I am actually going crazy with that. I think it's very cool, and that they're going to have a lot of value in the future. And they've already hit over 1,000 mints since inception, and things are going well. I mean, the adoption is happening gradually, but then all of a sudden, suddenly. And it's really cool to see that network effect taking place. Over 300,000 addresses minted. Huge. So the news is Proppy and Coinbase Prime. How to buy your dream home securely with crypto escrow. You guys believe this? We did a whole spaces on this the other day, and it was just phenomenal. Are you on a home buying journey for your new family? Maybe you're looking for a second vacation home or investment for a rental estate. Proppy collaborated with Coinbase Prime, and we have your back during the whole buying and closing process. So, I mean, why is it important? Since 2017, the intersection of crypto and real estate is creating exciting new opportunities. The global cryptocurrency market grew beyond $2 trillion as of October 2024, while the U.S. real estate market is valued at an astonishing $40 trillion. Wow. So what exactly is crypto escrow? Crypto escrow is a secure method of holding cryptocurrency funds during transaction process. An escrow service is a neutral third party ensuring both the buyer and seller fulfill their obligations before the funds are released. This adds an extra layer of security and trust to high-value transactions such as home purchasing. I mean, putting a down payment down on in Bitcoin and having somebody be that escrow on chain. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And actually, it's going to force banks to compete, to provide services for their clients instead of being like, the hammer for once. It's gonna create a whole new paradigm. within the industry. And Coinbase has done a phenomenal job, and they're really putting pressure on banks by doing this. And here we have Tim Draper endorsing it, who's an early investor in Proppy. Crypto escrow. In 2021, 11.6% of the first-time homebuyers used crypto for their down payment. Our bet is that with this new service by Proppy and Coinbase, the portion of homebuyers using crypto to buy real estate will become standard practice. So this is his horse in the race for real estate, the RWA and real estate play, right? Like bringing property rights on chain. It is so important. It's massive. And Proppy is the leading company and it's still around under $100 million market cap right now, under $1 as we speak. I want to show you this chart. This is also from the Capital Mindset because I like to give you guys those gems for free on this channel. So as you can see, right around here is when I started with them around November time. We started to have a massive spikes up in volume, and we hit all the way up to around like spiked up to $4. And now we've retraced and we're currently on support. And that's the best time historically to load the boat. Now, this is not financial advice, evidently, but you know, if you want to play that's just in the sweet spot, for me, 100 million is the sweet spot and has massive room for growth. And I'm talking just back to $4 is a huge move, but I believe it could go well beyond that this cycle. I believe it could hit anywhere from 8 to 10 and maybe even higher if things really get heated and that RWA narrative takes off, with people, the likes of BlackRock being involved and talking about all things will be tokenized, right? I think this is a huge narrative coming up. Tim Draper is a very, very early visionary investor who backed this years and years ago, and he's still on it. And I'm loving this play, so I'm buying more at this level as well. That's your undervalued altcoin gem for the day. Thank you for tuning into this Sunday strategy, and I'll see you tomorrow.